I speak with you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's an absolute privilege to be with you. My name is Lorraine, and I run a charity initiative called Toilet Twinning. And if you've twinned your toilet, then thank you. That means that you are the proud owner of a certificate that hangs in your toilet that shows a picture of a latrine in an overseas community. And through your donation, we support water and sanitation programs in some of the poorest places on this planet. As we look at the subject of water as a gift and as a necessity, I want to look at three instances of water in the Bible. Water as a place of chaos, water in the context of trust, and water as a means of blessing. Water as a place of chaos is there from the first page of the Bible. In the creation story of Genesis 1, we read, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light.'" It is always God's plan to redeem the chaos and bring blessing. When Jesus talks to the Samaritan woman at the well, it is to explain that he is the water of life, that whoever drinks his water will never thirst. Our salvation through Jesus' sacrifice on the cross is the ultimate display of how God is always working to bring blessing out of chaos. It's the heart of God to redeem and restore. But very often God calls us to wait on him and to trust. Often we have to experience the chaos, not knowing if and when the blessing will come. And very often we're part of the redemptive purposes of God. He uses us to help bring his restoration to the lives of those around us. In Mark 4, when the disciples and Jesus were in the boat and a storm whipped up, the disciples were afraid. They had to trust that Jesus would act. And Jesus rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And the wind died down and it was completely calm. And Jesus shows how he takes control of the physical water. In the parting of the Red Sea, so that the Israelites could escape from slavery, they came to the chaos of the Red Sea, and they thought that their bid for freedom was over. But through the parting of the Red Sea, the Israelites crossed safely. In the book of Joshua, chapter 1, with the passage of Joshua's calling to be leader after Moses had died, Joshua had to take the Israelites across the River Jordan in order for them to travel to the land God had promised them. So as we focus on water as a setting of trust and look at the story of Joshua, my question is this: what is God asking us to trust him with? What's our River Jordan that God asks us to travel through in order that we would reach a place of blessing? As Toilet Twinning CEO, I travel to some of the poorest places on the earth, and I'd like to tell you a story of a woman I met in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Bawili has had to trust God to take her and her family from a place of chaos to a place of blessing. Bawili is a mother and a grandmother. Her husband was shot dead during the civil war insurgency in the 1990s, and Bawili fled with her remaining family to Tanzania, where they lived as refugees for about 10 years, until 2008. And when the refugee camp was closed down, they were sent to a province in eastern Congo to start again. They had nothing, and there was nothing for them in Wandiga village. No water, no sanitation, and they had to start from scratch. They could only afford one jerry can, and Bawili's teenage daughter Abinda would make 3 journeys a day to the lake for water. It was a 90-minute round trip. Each journey put her at risk of attack, and the water wasn't clean. A few months after they settled in Wandiga, Bawili's daughter Abinda was bitten by a snake, which has left her with long-term health issues. And a few months after that, she was attacked by a group of men as she went to toilet in the bush. She became pregnant through the attack and had to leave school. Her son is now 6, and Abinda told me that she hasn't had a day since when she has felt truly happy. That is a story of chaos. In those 10 years as a refugee in Tanzania and those years of living in Wandiga village without clean water and without sanitation, Bawili must have felt pretty hopeless. She must have wondered if God was hearing her prayers. She must have thought, why me? Why was my husband shot dead? Why is life so difficult for my family? But this isn't a story about chaos. This is a story about trust and a story about blessing. In 2012, the answer to Bawili's prayers came through a programme that Toilet Twinning helped fund. The programme built a borehole so that the community would have fresh water. And we set up a community health club so that people in the village could learn about sanitation and health. When I met Bawili, she told me that she was among the first to join the club. She was first to arrive at the meetings, last to leave. And she was the natural person to be voted as president. And she would travel around the village saying, don't look at me. I can't afford a toilet. I can't build one, and I don't have a husband to help me. But you must build a toilet yourselves to protect your family's health. And 18 months ago, the group voted unanimously to build Bawili a toilet. The members gathered together. Bawili brought the water, helped make the bricks. Together, they built a toilet for her family. Bawili says this: if you do not have love, you cannot build a good society. Bawili has experienced the love of a community reaching out to her, and her toilet is her pride and joy. She says, my toilet brings my family freedom, privacy, and dignity. We used to feel shame when people would visit us and we didn't have a toilet for them to use. I could never invite people for a meal because I would be so ashamed that there wouldn't be a toilet for them to use during their time with us. People would shout abuse at us as we would walk to the bush to go to the toilet. She says that she is so thankful and happy to have a toilet. Bawili's toilet is a symbol of what's possible when people reach out in love. It's also a symbol of the fact that Bawili never gave up. Bawili's trusting and hope came to fruition. God says to Joshua in verse 3 of chapter 1, you and the people get ready. I am about to give you every place you set your foot, as I promised Moses. God's promises didn't live and die with Moses. God's bigger than death. We see that in the resurrection of Jesus. The plans of God will always prevail. And with Joshua, the plans of God are about to prevail because God is raising up Joshua to take on the baton. And if Joshua had refused, because we all have a choice in this adventure of faith, God would have raised up someone else. But God started with Joshua, cast a vision, and said to Joshua, trust me, follow me, get ready. 3 days from now, you're going to cross the River Jordan and take possession of the land that I'm giving you to own. So how do we get ready? We have to be aligned to God. We have to hear God's voice. Imagine if we heard God saying audibly to us, no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. I will be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous. We have to hear God's voice and we have to look out for one another. We're called to one another living. There's so many aspects in the Bible where we read about how we must love one another, accept one another, be at peace with one another, bear with one another, seek good for one another. As Bawili says, if you don't have love, you can't have a good society. God's redemptive and restorative purposes are in us, building a community where love is at the centre. For me personally, as the CEO of Toilet Twinning, I have to say there are times when I've been stretched to the end of myself. Growing Toilet Twinning over the last 5 years has not been easy. It used to be just me in my living room, and we raised about £200,000 a year. Now we have a team of us, and we raise about £1.5 million a year. But that's not enough. That's not enough for the Bawilis of this world. There are 2.4 billion people in the world who don't have a toilet. And if Toilet Twinning is going to put a dent in that number and take a stand for the Bawilis of this world, then we have to be aligned to God. We have to hear his voice, and we have to trust one another as a team. Because Toilet Twinning is a story of my relationship with God, but it's also a story of my team working together and loving one another and loving people of the world who we will never meet, but who we want to see justice for. If I touch very briefly on Ephesians 6 and the armour of God, being clothed in the armour of God is also part of our responsibility in trusting God. As we read in verse 14, we stand firm with the belt of truth around our waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with our feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. We have to run the race and do the things that God has called us to do, with feet that wear the shoes of the gospel of peace. We have to shine for Christ in this world. We have to reveal to people Jehovah Shalom, the God of peace. When I was in Haiti after the earthquake, and you could see tents as far as the eye, and people living with such poverty and such chaos, the things that relief organisations were doing looked so small compared to the suffering. And God challenged me with the words of 2 Corinthians. God said to me, "We fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." When I'm in DRC with Bawili, when I'm in Haiti after an earthquake, when I'm at the Toilet Twinning office, having catch-ups, writing emails, creating strategies, when I'm here speaking with you, I'm praying that I'm aligned with God and that his eternal plans and purposes are being outworked. I wrote part of this sermon on a train, and as I was sitting on the train, an announcement was made that there was going to be a delay because there was a fatality on the line at Woking. And that is a sobering reminder that chaos beckons all around us, that life can be overwhelming. I don't know what worries you today. I suspect quite a few of us have challenges, whether it's with our children, our marriages, our parents, our workplaces, our health. It's why God's words are so important to us. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Bawili has so much to teach us on this front. She moved from chaos to blessing, but she didn't just take that blessing for herself. She walked around her community, encouraging her community to love one another. Bawili used the little she has to sow into her community so that she's building a community built on love. We have a job to do, to live for the things of eternity. And so with that, I'll end with God's impartation to Joshua, that these words would go deep into our hearts and minds and souls. Be strong, be courageous, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for I will be with you wherever you go.